Jay here for Stretford Paddock. This is the Paper Talk. As you can see, we're live in the studio, so get involved in the chat and the comments. Going to be talking about all the latest Manchester United news. Going to be talking about Ruben Amorim, of course, because every day it seems to be more and more stories about the future of Manchester United's manager. Also, we'll be getting into some transfer stories. Always a few transfer stories doing the rounds, despite the fact the transfer window was short about a month ago. Plus, we'll be looking at how the so-called bomb squad is faring away from Old Trafford, and even some players who weren't part of the bomb squad but have moved on, because it seems like it's just when your luck's not in, it's not in, is it, for Ruben Amorim? And it's like the players he's got at a minute aren't performing to the levels that he needs, and the players he's got rid of have done quite well or are doing quite well. So it just adds to this air of a manager who's just under all sorts of pressure with nothing quite going right for him. Loads of people in the chat and the comments: Maurice Marshall, Mick Hollahorn, Brad H, Akash K, Real recognises Real, Montana R6 says morning, JB says morning Jay, we've purchased a new young defensive midfielder. I see. I'm going to get into that. Can I have a list of the stories as well on the screen? Yeah, Andy G says morning Reds, morning Jay. Make sure you are hitting that like button, please, you beautiful people. Yeah, and if you can stick a list of the stories so I can see what's coming up next, that would be great. Look, I know it is a little bit Groundhog Day, innit? Every day we're talking about the manager being under pressure. We're talking about how the board may or may not be losing faith with him, how there's other names being linked with a managerial job, and that isn't going to change until you start winning football matches. And I know it's not nice and it's not great, and I don't like coming on here sort of questioning the manager or talking about the manager's future all the time, but we come on here and we talk about what the papers are saying, and that is what the papers are saying. The papers are saying basically, look, Ruben Amorim's under intense pressure. Now you've got a game at the weekend against Sunderland. If he doesn't win that, it's only going to continue. If he wins that, maybe that gives him a little bit of a reprieve. But then in the not too distant future, you have got the game against Liverpool at Anfield coming up. So it doesn't feel like there's going to be much going on in terms of positivity unless we have a run of results that sort of surprise everyone. We'll see. David Griffith says, growing your hair, Jay. No. Right, let's talk about some of the so-called bomb squad, because a lot of them were featuring last night. This is an opinion piece in Evening News, but it sort of rounds up or sums up what is going on with some of the players that have left Old Trafford and just where we're at. We're at this thing now where it feels like everything is almost like a stick to beat Ruben Amorim with. Like, what's going on at United, even what's not going on at United. And when players that he's sold or have moved on under his tenure start doing quite well, then people jump on it. So I know this is an opinion piece, but it sort of highlights what's being said about Ruben Amorim at the minute and some of the players. So I don't know if you watched any of the Champions League last night. I saw the Barcelona PSG game. Marcus Rashford got an assist, a very good ball for Barcelona's goal. We know he scored a couple of goals against Newcastle in the Champions League. He's been getting a lot of assists in La Liga. He hasn't been getting any goals in La Liga, but he has got assists. It seems like that move to Barcelona is working out for him. You look at Rasmus Hojlund. He got 2 goals for Napoli in the Champions League last night. He looks like he's regained his mojo. Then you look at Garnacho. I think the Garnacho one in this article is slightly misleading, because it's saying how Garnacho I think he had a hand in the goal when, was it Benfica Chelsea played? But I think there was a lot of question marks about Garnacho at Chelsea. He's not sort of hit the ground running there. I think some of his decision making, which is a criticism people had with him at Old Trafford, hasn't been great. And I think there are still a few questions there. The point of this, though, the reason I'm highlighting it is because there's a few articles out there, there's a lot going on social media where people are sort of questioning what is going on with the manager and whether he made the right decision. So, look, if you look at each player individually, Garnacho, I think he had to go. I think it was obvious because of what he said post the Europa League final. I think it made sense. I think you can't just have a player who's sort of criticising you. He hadn't quite been performing at levels we could. I know he's only young, he's 21 years old, and he's been a very talented young player, but you get to a point where you go, okay, is it sort of, is it worth sticking with him and hoping that he's going to find that consistency, or is he becoming a bit of a problem? There was all the stuff going on social media, all the stuff going on with his brother as well, so it became pretty untenable. The manager had pretty much made his mind up, and you thought, I get it, I don't think that's going to work out, and I don't think it's a great loss to move Alejandro Garnacho on at this time, because there was a time when you'd be like, look, let's not get rid of him, but I think that time had been and gone. Then you look at Marcus Rashford, there've been issues there, dropped from the squad for the game at the Etihad. had a bit of a problem with the manager. The manager wasn't happy with his attitude in training, his mindset. You get it. Marcus Rashford's performances hadn't been, again, like Garnacho, hadn't been consistent enough. Didn't look happy at Manchester United. You have to back the manager in that situation. A new manager's come in. He's asked a certain level from these players. Marcus Rashford hasn't delivered that. There was questions about what he was doing out of training. Was he going out too much? All that jazz, going out before games. Reports that he was. So again, you think, all right, I understand it. Antony, he's done well at Real Betis. Had so many opportunities at Manchester United and got worse. He did. He started off all right, Antony. I think, was it 3 goals in his first 3 games? First season, I thought he was a useful player. Had a few peaks and troughs, but overall did quite well. Then his second season wasn't good. And going into his 3rd season? I think was it? I can't remember the timings of it. I think we had 2 seasons, didn't we, with Antony, and then a little bit more. But it was obvious it just wasn't working with him. He went to Real Betis and then he did very, very well there. So you think, okay, I get it. Like, he's done well at Real Betis. He needs a move. We can get some money for him. It wasn't working at Old Trafford. He had lots of opportunities. I understand that one. The Rasmus Hojlund one is probably the one that's the most debatable. Because I think people looked at Antony, looked at Garnacho, and looked at Marcus Rashford and thought, look, you're not getting a tune out of them. With Hojlund, there was some people, not all, some people arguing that it was the service he wasn't getting, or that there was still a player there, if you look at his first season, and that it was worth sticking with him to try and sort of get the best out of him. Also, I don't think, whilst with the others, you could question, well, certainly with Marcus Rashford and with Alejandro Garnacho, you could question perhaps their desire. I don't think anyone was questioning Rasmus Hojlund's desire. I think it was more his ability. Was he good enough for Manchester United and what we need? Now, he started scoring goals for Napoli. That's made it look, people go, maybe we shouldn't have got rid of him. I would go back to it though and say, similar to what you say with Antony, it just wasn't happening for him at United. It wasn't. And we can rewrite history and we can talk about it all you want, and you can try and pretend that things weren't that bad and that maybe we should have, given him another chance. I think the only argument I would make with the Rasmus Hojlund situation is that it might have been worth the loan not having an obligation to buy or not having a buyout clause, where it was just a sort of, we give him a loan to Napoli and then we bring him back. There might have been some value in that. However, I don't think we can rewrite history. That second season was pretty woeful and the crowd had turned against him. He looked like he lost confidence. And we've seen it with a lot of players who go early. Scott McTominay did it, Chris Smalling did it. Not quite happening the way you want it to at Old Trafford. They go early, do really well. Ashley Young did it. He went to Italy and won Syria. So, I don't know. I feel like with Hojlund, I feel like it probably was the right move. And also, let's not forget, we brought in Benjamin Sesko. I don't think we've taken a step backwards. I think we brought in a better striker. The issue you might have still is he getting the level of service that he should be getting? Is this system suited to a striker? Does it provide him with the firepower they need? We'll see. He's got off the mark, Benjamin Sesko, which is good. There's probably the only positive for the Brentford game. Hopefully he can add a lot more goals to his stats, and we'll wait and see on that one. But I'm not quite in the camp of we've made a big mistake getting rid of all these players. I will say that if we get rid of Kobe Mainoo, guarantee you I will not be happy about that one, but we haven't yet, so I don't need to worry about it just yet. Let me know what you think. Patrick Olison says, how many players can we throw away because they can't play Amorim's system? Mainoo next, then Euro, ? This is where you start to worry. When you're looking at young players who do have the right mindset, who do perform quite consistently, but they just don't quite fit this system, that's when you start to worry. Now, Euro, I don't think he's going anywhere. We've only just bought him and he's been very, very good for Manchester United. But hasn't started the last 2 games. Does that tell you anything? Is that the manager thinking that when everyone's fit, maybe Lenny Yoro isn't my guy? I don't know. I don't want to get carried away here because it's so early on. But I do feel like with players like Yoro and Mainoo, they should be starting every week. You've got 1 game a week. So if you miss 1 game, you got to wait. You go in, 2 weeks for that game, or 2 weeks where you played 30 minutes or whatever. It's not enough. They should be playing every week. So I hope that we can find a way into this team for them. We'll have to wait and see. Akash K says, Jay, it wasn't just service. Look at how horrendous Rasmus' first touches compared to that with Sesko. Sesko is a far better striker. I agree with you. I think he is. I know it's only early doors, but I think the big thing for me about Benjamin Sesko is he came to Manchester United with a better reputation than Rasmus Hojlund. He'd scored quite consistently over a number of years. Rasmus Hojlund had 1 season in Serie A where he got 9 goals, and then he gets a massive move to Manchester United. It felt a little bit premature. It really did. And it felt a bit unfair on him as well because he was brought in and just thrown in straight away. It wasn't like he was brought in. Had we brought Harry Kane and Rasmus Hojlund, that would have been perfect because you could have had Harry Kane playing most games and maybe in the Europa or the Carabao when we were in it. You could have gone, right, okay, Rasmus, you're starting this one. Or maybe with half an hour to go, you bring him on. Or maybe now and again, you might even go 2 up top. I get that. That would have worked. But to throw in a 19, 20-year-old, whatever he was when he arrived, and just play him constantly, I think he's 21, play him constantly, even when his form had deserted him, didn't seem like a good move. And it didn't work out, did it? So I do feel a little bit sorry for him. Aka's case is spot on, Jay, sir. Bartek Somara says, Italian league is the Italian league. I love Scott, but never good enough for United. We are seeing the same with Rasmus. The level of the league is not the same. And I think, people will say, well, hang on a minute. The goal last night wasn't against wasn't in the Italian league. It was in the Champions League, but it was against Sporting, wasn't it? So we know the argument there. It's the argument you're hearing at the minute with Victor Gyökeres. It's like Portuguese opposition, is that the sort of is that a good barometer of whether you're good enough for Manchester United? Now I know Sporting are one of the better teams in Portugal, if not the best. So I get that, but I don't know. I just think from what we saw at Manchester United, it was time to move Rasmus Hojlund on. The only question I've got around this that I've thought about a little bit more recently is, would it have been better to bring in a midfielder and not get Sesko and wait? Could we have afforded to wait and maybe got Sesko a bit later on? Or would that have been an option? Was a midfielder more important? And could Hojlund have done a job for us for another year? Or could you have had a system where maybe Mbeumo was leading the line and you had Ahmad and Cunha? Maybe there's a conversation there. I'm not saying I regret signing Benjamin Sesko. I'm just saying it's a topic, it's a discussion that you can think, well, could that have been the move? Because our midfield is so out of kilter. I don't know. It's all ifs and buts, and maybe it's all hypotheticals, and it doesn't matter because we didn't. We bought Benjamin Sesko, we bought Matheus Cunha, we bought Brian Mbeumo, and we're still not scoring enough goals. It's just really frustrating. Just the dude says, only Xavi can save Man United. 50 Shillings says, mad how people will jump to say post-MU glow up. Bastin says, Serie A has been a great watch this season. Much more enjoyable than the Premier League so far. It does feel like Serie A is much more competitive, doesn't it? You have so many different Scudetto winners. It's so exciting there in terms of you don't know who's going to win it. Where in this league, it's pretty much City every year. Now and again, it's the Scousers and Arsenal finish second. I mean, it is a little bit repetitive and not in a good way. Me and Joe were talking about this last night, and it's really frustrating, like how our two biggest rivals, or two of our biggest rivals, probably our two biggest rivals, are City and Liverpool. And they're the ones going for the title most seasons. When does that ever happen? When do you have a club where your two biggest rivals are going toe-to-toe for the major honours and you're floundering? It's horrible. Let me know. Get involved in the chat and the comments. Let us know what you think. Stephanie Griffey says, good morning, Jay Legend. Hit the likes, please. Great shout. Good to see Stephanie in the chat. Hit that like button. We've got a Ruben Amorim story, is it? Man United fear Ruben Amorim will walk as Ineos sack stance made crystal clear. This same Ruben Amorim under increasing pressure at Manchester United, but the club's owners Ineos are worried that the Portuguese boss will walk as Sir Jim Ratcliffe's stance is clear. You can get rid of that, thanks. It's a good talking point because we've spoken about this before. We've had a debate on the channel. Will he walk? Will he go before he's pushed? Now, the big sort of counter argument to that is he'd lose his payout. He wouldn't get the money he will get if he's sacked, if he walks away, because you've left the job, you haven't been forced out, so you might lose out on millions of pounds. And also his coaching staff might lose out on a certain amount of money if he does that. So that makes me think he probably won't. However, he is an emotional guy, and you could see him reacting in an almost off-the-cuff way. If things carry on going against him, it wouldn't be shocking if he did walk. It wouldn't be the most shocking thing. I'm not saying I think he will, it just wouldn't surprise me that much, because the guy looks done in. You seen at the beginning of the last season, or when he first came in, he was constantly on the touchline, shouting at people, telling people where to go. Do you remember the game at Ipswich, the first game he managed, where he was on Casemiro? I remember being at I think it was Bodo Glimt game, where he was on Ahmad, constantly on him, like, you get there. He's not doing that as much now. And I don't think it's because all the players are doing as they're told and he doesn't need to give him any feedback. I just think he looks like he's almost like deflated with it all. We see him sat there with his feet up on the thing, looking down. We see him looking down and with his hands in his head in his hands. Now, look, I don't watch penalties, but I'm not the manager of Manchester United. And when you see a manager who's like just not even watching any of the penalties, that's a little bit concerning. When you see the lack of action going on with him compared to how he was when he first arrived, you think, has he lost a little bit of his vavavoom? I don't know. Let me know what you think. Are we looking too much into body language, or do you think there is something in it? Adam Kenny says, we're waiting to get beat by Liverpool before we sack him. I think that might be the shout. That's what I think. I think if we lose to Liverpool, I think he'll go. And I think the only reason we haven't done it before is no one wants to come in and have Liverpool away as your first game. Ewan says, give him this season. All right, Ewan. Is there a cut-off point with that? Would you give him the rest of this season regardless? If at Christmas, I'm not trying to be funny here, if at Christmas we're in like the bottom 5, would you stick with him? Or would you look at it and go, look, relegation is a real possibility? Now, the reason I asked that isn't because I'm trying to be melodramatic. The form under Ruben Amorim is relegation form. It's pretty much, I think, out of all the clubs that have been here since he arrived consistently, I think he's 17th out of those 17 clubs. If it carries on, what the points ratio he's got, the 27% win ratio, whatever it is, that is relegation type form. So do you get to a point where you go, look, we can't take the risk that there's an even slight possibility this guy could take us down? Or do you think, no, that would never happen, even if we're right near the bottom, you stick with him, it'll come good? Let me know what you think. Bartek Samara says, I don't think he makes it to Liverpool. Sunderland in his last game. Steve M says, Christmas at least, end of the season ideally. Ivan Bulotos says he's a dead man walking in his own mind. Kieran Evans says, stick with him as long as we are in the top 12. Fair enough. Steve M says, I'm putting a line under last season, not counting those games. I have, to a degree. I said that. But I think when we're struggling this season, it's human nature in it. It's difficult to ignore last season as well. You try to, but then people are going to go, well, look, it's not just this season, it's also last season. Paul Beebe says, I'd give him until the end of the season, get him a decent CM in January, and give the front three a chance to settle in. Okay. Stuart Frederick says, sticking with him until December would then leave it too late for an interim to save the season. Angel Lawrence says, ignore the papers, they're half the problem. It is difficult to ignore the papers on the paper talk. I'm not going to lie to you. Let's talk about Rangnick and Glasner. Oliver Glasner to replace Ruben Amorim at Man United. Here's what Ralph Rangnick thinks. So Ralph Rangnick has weighed in on the Oliver Glasner thing. Obviously, Oliver Glasner he's done well at Crystal Palace, and was he at Frankfurt before? So with Ralph Rangnick, who managed Manchester United after Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, he said, for me, Oliver Glasner is currently one of the most exciting coaches, not only in Germany, but in all of Europe, an absolute top coach. The best Austrian coaches, in my opinion. This is an important approach we need to find in Austria so that we can give as many of the next Oliver Glasners as possible. He's an example of... he says it there. Rangnick has suggested Glasner was an example for Austrian football to develop top coaches on a European scale. Look, Ralph Rangnick can have his opinion. He can say what he wants about Oliver Glasner. I remember when Ralph Rangnick arrived and we had people like Jurgen Klopp and Thomas Tuchel praising him, saying how great he was. A lot of people on his channel were saying, yeah, this could be an exciting time, gegenpress, and also he'll move upstairs when the successor comes in. He's only at the end of the season. Ten Hag came in, didn't want anything to do with him. Rangnick left, and his time at United was poor, if we're being honest. Hertzler, what's this? Brighton boss Fabian Hertzler has refused to be joining to talk about Manchester United. Right, that'd be a disastrous move. He's done all right at Brighton. He's too young. Don't get him in. He hasn't proven himself properly in the Premier League yet. So he might not be saying anything about it, but I don't think Hertzler is the way to go at Manchester United at all. I think that'd be a bad one. Let's talk about a signing we've made. Says it here, Manchester United have now sealed and signed a deal to bring in 17-year-old Colombian talent Christian Orozco. I mentioned this the other day. We knew this was going to happen. Fabrizio Romano has confirmed it. $1 million transfer fee from Fortaleza, and deal valid from summer 2026. So look, this is our new sort of MO. We're buying. Who's that? Adam McCullough ringing me. I am just live doing the paper talk. You okay? It's all right. See you soon. That was Adam McCauley. He'll be on the channel later for Off the Bar. So I just thought I'd let him know what's going on. We know we're buying this kid. We'll wait and see. This is the new MO in it from United. We bring in young players as well as established players like Mateus Cunha, Brian Mbeumo and Benjamin Sesko, but we bring in players like Seka Kone, like Aiden Heaven, like Chido Obi, and we try and nurture them and get the best out of them, and that's part of the sort of new ethos in Manchester United. Say new, we've done it in the past. You know, Paul Pogba, Andres Pereira, Alejandro Garnacho, these are all players that came in United when they were 15, 16 from other clubs, so it's not brand new, but it does feel like Ineos are sort of edging a little bit more towards this. Just finally, where would we be without a Carlos Baleba story? This is in the Mirror, that's not the right one, the Mirror via Team Talk. Basically, I think the gist of this is, no matter what happens with Ruben Amorim, we are going to buy Carlos Baleba. United want him. If Ruben Amorim's gone, it doesn't matter. We see Baleba as a future Manchester United player. So that sort of tells you they think he's system-proof. It's not like, well, we can only get him for a Ruben Amorim system. He's the type of player that can fit into almost any system. So if you're playing a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1 or whatever you're going to play, Carlos Baleba will fit in it. So you don't necessarily only get him if Ruben Amorim is your manager. It feels like United, again, have done this in the past. Ander Herrera was linked with United when David Moyes was manager. We bought him under Louis van Gaal. It definitely felt like that was a signing that was in the works. Luke Shaw arrived almost the same time as Louis van Gaal. I don't think Luke Shaw was someone that Louis van Gaal came in and went, quick, get me Luke Shaw. Certain signings are sort of earmarked by the club, and especially with Ineos, especially with this new structure, you would think that they have players that they want and sort of look at and go, okay, this is a player that, yes, this manager might want him, but also if he doesn't, he can do a job for years to come for Manchester United. It felt a little bit like that with Benjamin Sesko. There was talk that maybe Amorim wanted a midfielder over a striker, but the club, the hierarchy, Ineos, whoever you want to call it, wanted Benjamin Sesko, so we got him. So I get it. Listen, I'm going to leave it there. Don't forget, if you're not doing so already, to hit like, share and subscribe. Go and check out the merch as well. We have got merch for sale. Should be a link in the description as well. We'll put one in the chat. We're going to be back later on today with Off the Bar. Also, we'll be looking ahead even to the big game against Sunderland this weekend. Another big must-win game for Ruben Amorim. It feels like every game in a minute is a must-win one for the Manchester United manager. I'm Jay Moy. This has been the Paper Talk. Thanks for watching.